We're back for another Full Build Friday, and we are hot on the high heels of League's latest leading lady. After managing to manufacture Muscle Mommy Medarda, we're taking a crack at her darling daughter, Mel, the Soul's Reflection.
Any worthwhile venture involves risk.
Now this character is freshly released, but has some history in the show of Arcane itself, so let's talk build goals. As mentioned, Mel is Ambessa's daughter, but was sent to Piltover after she was considered too soft for Noxus. She became a highly influential politician there, where she influenced the development of Hex Tech. In the course of Arcane, she discovered magic apparently inherited from her father, leading to the inclusion of this charismatic counselor in League itself. In that game, she is the Searing Brilliance passive, which empowers her attacks with bonus projectiles after she uses an ability. Additionally, her attacks and abilities apply Overwhelm, which will stack up on a target and execute them when they reach low health. She uses the first of her activated abilities, Radiant Volley, to unleash a barrage of exploding projectiles. Then, as seen in the show, she can create a barrier around herself with Rebuttal. In-game, this makes her immune to damage for a second and will reflect any projectiles, including spells, right back at their attacker. Her Solar Snare launches an orb that roots enemies at its center and slows those in its radius. She then continues the solar theme with Golden Eclipse, increasing the effects of her Overwhelm, triggering this ability to deal damage to all overwhelmed enemies, with the damage increasing based on the number of stacks. Mel is a mage with the potential to bring about vast devastation. Even her protective power launches assaults back at her attacker. She shows that Noxian blood still runs in her veins with her ability to execute others, and the names of her abilities have a bit of a light theming going on. Additionally, she is a highly capable politician and public speaker. From there, we will start off where we always do, with the ancestry. We're keeping it sweet and simple with the human ancestry and tapping into the skilled heritage. Mel is a bright and capable woman, and given her association with Piltover, the city of invention, she uses this to become trained in crafting. She takes natural ambition as her ancestry feat, which we'll see the fruits of when we get down to her class. She then rounds out her ancestry options with a boosted dexterity and charisma. I'm tapping into a regional background here with the Grand Council Bureaucrat. This is a bit lower on the totem pole than she probably should be, but it grants her training in diplomacy and government lore, which are a pretty surefire fit. It also nets her group impression as a skill feat, letting her appeal to her fellow council members or the Piltovians in general all at once. This background gives her another boost to charisma, as well as a free boost that she can spend on dexterity. That brings us to Mel's class, and where Ambessa was the martial matron of the Medardas, her daughter doesn't quite follow in her footsteps. Instead, Mel will make use of the Sorcerer class, which sees her getting another boost to charisma. It bestows her with Sorcerer's potency and blood magic, as well as a bloodline on which to draw upon. For this build, we'll use the Imperial Bloodline, which will let her shore up her defenses when using her blood magic, akin to her Rebuttal, and grants her arcane spells. Normally, she'd be bereft of a feat, but we get an option here thanks to her natural ambition. However, I'd have to be honest, the option we'll be looking at is legacy content, something from the pre-master. But it is technically usable within Pathfinder Society, and if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for Full Build Friday. That all said, Mel starts on a long track when it comes to her feats with Counterspell. This is setting up for something down the line, but for the time being, you'll probably want to pick up spells that you suspect to be of common use so that she can use them to snuff out the spells of others. However, we're still relying on some spells to capture her features, and to that end we use the Shield cantrip, further resembling her Rebuttal. The Imperial Bloodline comes in clutch with Force Barrage as her granted spell, a perfect pick for the projectiles of her Radiant Volley, especially as we level it. When it comes to skills, the Imperial Bloodline has already made her trained in Arcana and Society, perfect fits, but she further invests in Acrobatics, Deception, and Intimidation. This scant selection is why we needed the Skilled Heritage earlier. For her ability boost, she enhances her Dexterity, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma, and will have a focus on the last of those, but she will want some Dexterity as well. A ranged weapon to charge up with her passive will be important for her, but we'll get more into that down the line. I hope saying that we're starting off second level with an Archetype isn't getting too predictable, but Dandy Dedication is too fantastic a fit for Mighty Mel to pass up on. Right off the bat, it makes her an expert in deception and society, and lets her influence rumors, pushing the public to believe what she wants them to. She sticks with this theme of diplomacy with the Bonmo skill feat, which might end up helping her allies more than her, as my take on the build doesn't see a lot of will save spells. With 3rd level, Mel gains access to signature spells, which we'll discuss momentarily. Before that, we take a skill increase to diplomacy and then grab Hobnobber. Enhancing her diplomatic ability is far more important than any of the benefits that we can usually get from general feats. There's also spells to talk about here, so first things first, she is going to signature Force Barrage. The benefit isn't quite obvious yet, but it will be down the line when she can fire off more of those missiles. She gets Dispel Magic automatically, which she'll be signaturing as well. She can pick up Rhyme Slick as something that damages and also slows enemies a bit, inspired by her Solar Snare, though far from fitting its theme. We look at Bespell Strikes at 4th level, letting her chart up her strikes after casting a spell as per her Searing Brilliance. Then, since counterspelling may need her to know what spells her foes are throwing, she takes Recognize Spell, which is a reaction for now. But she's going to get quicker at this with time, and that will let her use it alongside the counterspell. She starts 5th level with boost to her Dexterity, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma. This boost to her Intelligence makes her trained in Athletics, since she is a Noxian after all, and then she takes her actual skill increase to Arcana, making her an expert there. Following on there, Magical Fortitude also means that she's an expert in Fort Saves. Witch Warden fits in as her Ancestry feat, befitting her Mistress of Magic following her dealings with the Black Rose. Furthermore, she gains haste automatically here and will signature Cave Fangs, a damaging and slowing effect that is another reference to her Solar Flare. For Majestic Magic Mel's 6th level, we take Bleed Out, allowing her to inflict a victim with persistent bleed damage. Now there isn't any bleed in her kit, but if this persistent damage can finish off a low health enemy after she's been nailing them with spells, then this might just be the way to cover the execute of her passive. She also takes Courtly Graces. She's an Noxian nobility and is pretty high up on the food chain in Piltover as well, which makes this a solid fit for her. By 7th level, Mel becomes an expert with her spells, but becomes a master of diplomacy with her skill increase. Again, we're looking at a skill feat here with Eyes of the City rather than a general feat, helping Mel track down inventors and the like that she can serve as a patron for. This rank of spells features Dispelling Globe, letting her cancel out incoming spells per her rebuttal, but lacking the reflecting effect. Naturally, she will be signaturing this spell. There's a certain step to our sorceress that is simulated in Statement Strut, because seriously, just look at her walk. She gains another Archetype feat with Distracting Flattery, which is another reaction, though one for social interactions to fix up the faux pas of her allies rather than for one in the midst of combat. 9th level makes her an expert in reflex saves and a master in Arcana with her skill increase. Courteous Comeback serves as her Ancestry feat, allowing her to cover for her own social missteps this time, and as a free action to boot. There's a slowing non-damage spell in the form of Stagnate Time here, but this is one you have to be careful about because it can affect your allies as well. For her ability boost at 10th level, she'll enhance her Dexterity, Constitution, Wisdom, and Charisma. Signature Spell Expansion grants her some extra signature spells of a certain level, such as Rhyme Slick and maybe Horizon Thundersphere for the big blast of the Solar Snare. Then with her skill feat, she'll take Shameless Request, another diplomacy feat and one that she can use to gain favors that she would otherwise be unable to curry. As a sorcerer, Mel finally becomes an expert in Perception and with her weapons at 11th level, which also sees her increase her Deception to Mastery, important for navigating any political situation. She finally picks up a general feat with Fleet, just letting her get a bit more speed to better strut her stuff. Thinking on her Golden Eclipse, we really just want some big damage spell with a decent area and range, because in-game it doesn't have any range. It just affects everybody with overwhelmed stacks no matter where they are on the map. Phantasmal Calamity might not be a bad option, and it is the one that I signatured for the build here. We do look at another option to this end come 12th level with Explosion of Power. This is much shorter range and is centered around her, but it being blood magic means that she can follow up a spell with it, kind of like how she has to get overwhelmed stacks on enemies before she can even use her Golden Eclipse. She finally improves Recognize Spell with Quick Recognition as her skill feat, which will allow her to use it as a free action rather than a reaction once per round. For Mel's 13th level, she gains Defensive Robes and Weapon Specialization as her class features, before she takes a skill increase to Society. With her Ancestry feats, she uses Keep Up Appearances so that she can assure the politicians she's maneuvering against can't tell when they have the advantage. She can also pick up an utterly massive area with Eclipse Burst, which happens to share at least part of the name of her Golden Eclipse, so this could maybe work for that as well. Reaching back into Legacy content once more, and specifically following up Counterspell, is Reflect Spell at 14th level. This is the main way that we'll cover her rebuttal, letting her send a spell shot at her rocketing back at her assailant. The only problem is, as I mentioned with the Counterspell itself, she needs to have the spell that she's countering with, and that can be a little rough on the limited spell budget of the Sorcerer. She's still finding feats that she likes with Leverage Connections, which will let her ask for more potent favors, manifesting in boosts on related skill checks after she calls in the aid. Another array of ability boosts at 15th level increases her Dexterity, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma. That increase to Intelligence means that she becomes trained in Performance, and her actual skill increase, of course, goes to Diplomacy, to make her a legend in it. She gets Master Spellcasting from her class feats, and then, with all of her magical might, she takes Incredible Investiture as her general feat, letting her wield a wider array of magical items. That's not something we actually see her doing, but I feel like it fits given her residence in Piltover. While this sultry strutting sorceress is seemingly selfish in-game, the Melon Arcane can shield others with her magic. This leads to the use of Anoint Ally, allowing her to use blood magic on her allies. Aside from the potential in regards to Explosion of Power being on your Marshal who should be in the midst of the melee, she can also provide her Imperious Defense to guard her teammates. For her skill feat, she uses her Legendary Diplomacy to gain Legendary Negotiation. She never really manages to pull this off in the show, and obviously not in the game, but that's no reason to stop trying. Mel's Will increases with Majestic Will at 17th level, which also means that she'll get crit successes whenever she rolls a success. Her skill increase makes her a legend in Arcana, and then she takes Heroic Presence. I was going to skip this one at first, but considering the shielding of her powers, I do think it ends up being a solid fit. Additionally, 17th level means 9th rank spells, which in turn means that we can find the legacy spell, Power Word Kill. Now, why exactly are we looking for a legacy spell? Because this one can instantly execute a creature at low enough health, just like the Overwhelm stacks of her Searing Brilliance. 18th level leaves our leading lady with the Reflect Harm class feat, another blood magic effect that has similar effects to her rebuttal. This feels like maybe it was intended to replace Reflect Spell, but I'm not entirely certain on that, so I'm using both. Back on her skill feats, she has Glad Hand, letting her very swiftly make friends, or at least make people think that they are friends. It's handy letting her wine and dine real quick. Our last odd level will grant Mel the Legendary Spellcaster and the Bloodline Paragon class feature, giving her access to 10th rank spells. Her final skill increase makes her a legend in Deception, which she will immediately make use of to take Reveal Machinations, letting her hit enemies with a debuff that she can actually take advantage of, aiming at lower saves and the like. Rounding out the build of our beauteous badass are ability boosts to Strength, Constitution, Intelligence, and Charisma. This boost to her intelligence will make her train in Occultism. But as for her 20th level class feat, she takes Tenacious Blood Magic to extend the duration of her blood magic effects. I'm not quite sure how that works with Reflect Harm, perhaps it's once per round for the full minute. Either way, I think it should be fun. She closes out her skill feats with Biographical Eye, letting her size up political opponents and figure out how to approach them to get what she wants out of them. We've already got one archetype under our belt, but you're going to get more than that in a free archetype game. There honestly aren't too many dandy feats, so looking at other options, you could go for the Cathartic Mage dedication for more spells, though I haven't really settled on an emotional focus for her. You could also potentially look into the Ostili Host dedication, which features a feat called Spell Swallow, as another way to shut down the spells being slung in her direction. We've made a Madam of Magic who's mastered offensive and defensive castings, so let's go ahead and review exactly what we've built. Mel, the Soul's Reflection, is a skilled human sorcerer of the Imperial bloodline and the Grand Council bureaucrat background. This background reflects her place in Piltover's council, which she also explores with a lot of her diplomacy and society-based feats, such as her leveraged connections, courteous comeback, and shameless request. There's two effects when it comes to her Searing Brilliance passive. She has Bespell Weapon to channel the might of her magic into her strikes, and we looked at a few ideas for her Overwhelm. Bleed Out might finish off an enemy, but the true low health execution comes from her Power Word Kill spell. Radiant Volley, on the other hand, is super easy to represent with Force Barrage. But then we're back to her feats with Rebuttal. She uses the likes of Reflect Spell and Reflect Harm to launch the attacks of enemies right back at them, though Dispelling Globe isn't bad for it either. There are effects that immobilize, there are effects that slow, but getting all that and damage is a little rough in a single spell, leaving her to rely on stuff like Rhyme Slick or Cave Fangs for her Solar Snare. Finally, Golden Eclipse is just a great burst of damage. The Sorcerer's Potency adds more damage to her spells, just like how her ult passively increases the effects of her Overwhelm, while the great burst of damage can be done by any number of spells. I personally liked Eclipse Burst for at least matching with a bit of the theme of the original ability. Strutting her stuff with unsubtle certainty, this spouting sorceress shields against spells, sending them straight to sinister sources in synchronization with salvos and solar showings. Darda made, that covers today's Full Build Friday. Let me know what you think of this build and what other sorts of builds you'd like to see in a comment. You can check out item suggestions and character sheets for this build, and other builds I've done, over on the Monster Monday blog, which is linked below, along with the Twitter and Discord. Thanks for watching, and have a fantastic Friday.
The arcane is at my fingertips.